Hey, Tim Holstad, singer songwriter. Thanks for stopping. So, I am trying to make sure I get all this posting done for this week. Not exactly the most enjoyable thing for me, but hey, you learn. And we'll get into our main point with this. You've got to do all the details around what it is that you want to do if you're going to accomplish that thing you want to do. So there's all this other stuff that you've got to learn. And for me, obviously, you're looking at uh, I've got to expand. I had to learn how to work with audio and work with a digital audio workstation so I could do the albums. But if I was going to market, now I've got to learn to work with video. And uh, this kind of ranks up there for with a root canal for me working with tech because I had a bad experience with it. Uh, I've probably mentioned in the past that I had a setup that worked, and I recorded my demo CD on this, and then that system crashed. I'd gotten malware on the computer it was on. They upgraded the operating system, and nothing would work anymore. And then I lost the disk no longer worked where I had the stuff saved on. So everything was gone, and I had to then start from scratch. I had to do tech, I had to deal with all of this. And AI has helped immensely just to be able to go to this source that doesn't run out of patience, is always open, and you can ask the questions you've got to ask. But we've got to get back to our why. We have to find that. And for a lot of people, that's very hard. It's amazing to me for how many people that's hard to do. Find your why. It's so important. And so we're going to try a different way about this today because I was thinking, maybe not such a safe thing for you, but I was thinking. And I look back at my own life, and even though I had this thing that was after me, and I knew what I had to do, really, there's all the outside world saying, you can't make a living at that, give it up. And so there's these things in life that we're supposed to do, right? Get married, have a family. Did that. And then, well, it was a tough thing. I mean, obviously, I paid the price for it in a lot of ways. But my main question is, what have you failed at? And I had to look at this because, if you do decide to get married, you do have children, you've got this family that you've got to take care of, that you've got to make sure is provided for. And so you get a chance to fail at a lot of things. Hopefully you do enough right as a parent and as a spouse, but there's a lot of things you get a chance to fail at because you've got to make something happen, and it's got to be right now. And so I made this little list here of all different things that I've ended up having to do to just try and keep going, There's a lot of things that you're going to have to do to pay the bills while you're chasing a dream. And so you get a lot of opportunities to fail. So if I pull up this list here, I see, as I have to remind myself sometimes, my first job was a paper route at 14, right? And then I graduated into doing food service jobs, and this led me up through college. And then after that, I did some retail, and then there were some sales jobs. Oh yeah. Then there was working as a courier for a bit, and this is when I got married. And that was a good job until the ownership changed and the paychecks started bouncing, and that's our rent. That's food. There's a wife and two small kids at home. One's a baby. I gotta see what I can do. It was like 8 or 9 jobs I had the year that the courier system died. And one thing was driving a truck, and I did that long enough to mess up my back. And it was time to find something different. So there were some temp jobs working in warehouses and different things like this, and that ended up leading into office work. And then I was working at a bakery for a while doing that. Then I was working as a bookkeeper, and that led into an accounting position. And there were a lot of things, a lot of ways to fail through all this. I mean, obviously I'm not married anymore. And I've said this before in other videos that I've put on here. The world is smart enough to tell you to find your purpose. You've got to do that. But what it doesn't tell you is that once you do find it, it's not optional. And so you may be doing all these other things and not doing what you've got to do, and it's going to take a toll. And in my experience, eventually the body just has a way of saying, all right, you're not going to do what you're supposed to do? I quit. And you either die right away or you start that long, slow decline. And I figured this out when it was almost too late. So I've spent a good 20 years trying to regain my health. I'm not going to bore you with all the details with that, all the surgeries and everything. Stuff I'm still paying off, by the way. But we've got to level with ourselves. You've got to level with that person in the mirror. Who are you really? And sometimes it's a matter of you come up with this long list in life of all the ways you've failed. That kind of gets you back to the, okay, I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm not going to screw around with this anymore. What was that thing that's been hounding me, maybe? That elephant in the room. That thing that I should have done and always thought about. It can happen any number of ways, but you start with what you're good at. Maybe you don't even like it. Maybe you've persuaded yourself, there's no way I could do this because. But after you've failed enough times, that kind of has a way of bringing you back to that, whatever it was. So you level with yourself. Yeah, there was that teacher in school, my parents, my grandparents, could have been all these people that said, you know, you've got a gift with this thing and you ought to do it. And you look at this, and maybe you've got to swallow your pride and say, you know, they were right. I got to do this thing. And then you got to hunker down. You got to learn it. You've got to get as good as you possibly can at it. I know there's people that talk about, you know, a balanced life and everything, but if you're going to get really good at something, you're not going to have a balanced life. You're going to focus on this. There are going to be things that you have to give up, things that you have to let go, things that are actually hurting you. If you keep doing the altruistic things, you're not going to be good to anybody if you're dead. I mean, you know, of course I've been talking about how Mom died this year, and yesterday was her birthday, and it was really hard, and I really miss her. Wish I could have been able to call her and say happy birthday, let's get together, let's do something, but obviously couldn't. She's gone. But while we're still here, that's when we can do something. That's when we can do something with this gift. And you can't be altruistic to the point that you give up what your calling is, what your purpose is. You've got to do that thing, and that's how you're going to stick around. And the people that will help you, you've got to keep those people in your orbit. And the people that don't, maybe you really care about somebody, but if they can't support you, if they can't back you, if they can't help you, even if it's just to the point of staying out of the way so you can do what you got to do, you got to let them go. And so we get this long list of failures sometimes to find out what it is we should do. Or we're failing as we're going for this thing, and we get more honed in on where we have to go. But there's a lot of failures. There's a lot of times where things don't work out, and you've got a choice at that point. Do I give up? That'd be easier. Or do I find a way to keep going? And I want to close this today with just thinking about giving you another list that's kind of positive. So I did figure out how to work with audio. I did manage to rebuild my audio system, and I did manage to get the 2 albums out, and I'm working on the 3rd now again. I did manage to go through all the process to get those albums out, whether it was the album artwork or getting those things to disc makers and they put them out, and then you have to make sure you register with something like ASCAP or BMI so you get your royalties, and that's another process. And so there's all this that's happening, and obviously I'm going out and I'm playing shows when I can and preparing for those and the journeys that those are. And then there was finally getting to a point where I'm starting to understand the marketing and doing the Instagram and the Facebook posts, this YouTube channel. I mean, obviously, even before that, I had to get the website built. So there's a place where people can go and they can buy the albums that I've just spent all the money to get out and have a bunch of copies and so on. And now then, as I record this today, tomorrow is going to be the initial Zoom salon. I had the chance to I got that invitation to go to Oregon, so I had the chance to drive across the country, and get to this place and do this show, and people liked it, and I sold some CDs, and I got an email list, and so I had some people that I could do a Zoom salon for. I could invite them to it, and here we go. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'm not charging anything while I work out the bugs, but this is another step. The thing is that I'm bringing up all these things now because I could have at any point excuse me, in the days where I have lost everything, I'm rationing food just to stay where I'm living, and I have nowhere else to go. There's no other option. I'm recovering from this surgery or that surgery. The debt's piling up. I could have yielded to the chemical depression and just ended things. To be the most extreme about it. But I'd had enough counseling, enough training to deal with what I have to deal with, to know Hey, if you do that, it's all over for sure. You can't change it then. And what we feel, that's going to change. Circumstances, they're going to change. If we keep doing things, if we keep making our efforts, if we keep trying, we're going to end up planting things in this life as we go along, right? And you may ask yourself, how come I haven't got anything out of life? And the question would have to be asked then, what have you given out? What have you planted? What have you put out there? Maybe it's time to do some of that first, and then you can get some results. And I look at this life, I have more rings on the tree than I care to count at this point. And things are finally starting to happen a little bit. I can talk about this second list that I just gave you a couple minutes ago. But, it's taken... I started thinking about seriously doing this. Doing music for my thing back in high school. And that has been a good 40 years of trying to do this. That doesn't even count all the time beforehand that I was learning my craft as I'm growing up. And obviously, you got to keep learning, and you have to find your own voice and all that, but it comes from putting in the time, learning your craft, putting in the effort, making attempts, and going from there. So that here we are. I'm talking to you through this camera and asking you, looking back on my life, what have you failed at? And maybe you can, if nothing else, use that to get yourself on track, to find what it is you've got to do, who you really are, and you can pursue being that. We all want our lives to matter. We all want somebody to care about what it is we do, about us personally. And you're going to expose yourself with something like this to a lot of people who don't, and a lot of the time. And that's another story in itself, or another video in itself perhaps, but you've got to keep going anyway. Take whatever you can use to keep moving yourself forward, to find out, okay, this is what I got to do. How am I going to get there? How am I going to express myself in a way that's unique and different enough from the pack that I am saying what it is I want to say? And so much goes into that. You're going to do things. You're going to make attempts. And there's going to be failures. There's going to be ugly times. There's going to be some really bad times. There will be some good things eventually if you keep at it long enough. But that's the whole point. It's like, what have I failed at? Well, how do I make this work to my advantage? And there's one thing, yeah, people are going to tell you to be positive and everything, and it helps. But let's close with this thought. We're talking about failure. What have I failed at? I'm from Wisconsin now, and if you know anything about Wisconsin, they've got a football team called the Green Bay Packers, and there was this legendary football coach, Vince Lombardi, who is quoted as saying, "Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing." And I would take that for you, and I would subtract the word winning with persistence. Persistence isn't everything, it's the only thing. You have to keep going. That always has to be part of the picture, so that ultimately you will get over the top. Now, I'm going to wrap this up. I'll leave the free song plus story link in the description for you. But keep going. because you're worth it. Take it easy. We'll talk again.